Innovative Approaches to Planning, Unit 3 from Chapter 7, Lesson 1, Part 3. As with any organizational process, there are certain benefits and limitations to planning. Let's start off by looking at the benefits to planning. Goals and plans are really useful at providing a source of motivation because they tell employees what the organization wants to achieve and what they need to work towards. They can also help people to stay committed. Think about a strategic plan that might have a timing horizon of 5 to 10 years. It's easy to forget in such a long time what you're working towards, but good and clear strategic goals should continue to motivate employees towards achievement. They also guide resource allocation, so there shouldn't be a lack of clarity about where we should use our budget or our human capital. If our goals are clear, our resources should be allocated according to achieving them. And then they're a call to action in the organization. So really, it helps everyone focus on the most important outcomes and make it clear what they need to do in order to achieve those goals. Goals and plans also set a standard of performance for us, because inherently they tell us what the performance criteria are to achieve a desired outcome. Some of the limitations of planning are that goals and plans can create a false sense of certainty. Of course, they can't predict the future, so the challenge might be that managers stick to these plans even though the writing's on the wall that the situation is changing. Managers therefore need to continually re-examine the assumptions that their plans are based on. Goals and plans can unfortunately also cause management to behave in a rigid way in an environment that's quite turbulent. If it becomes clear that the goals, plans, and timeframes are no longer appropriate, then it wouldn't be wise to stick to that plan. It requires a degree of flexibility for management to deal with change and uncertainty. And then goals and plans can get in the way of intuition and creativity. And because intuition and creativity are so important for the organization to stay competitive and innovative, managers should be aware of incentives they might be creating that force, if you will, their employees to play it safe in, for example, using the management by objectives instead of offering creative solutions. We've spoken a bit about the unpredictable and changing environment. So what should managers do to plan for such a turbulent environment? The first option is contingency planning. Managers can plan for emergencies, setbacks, and unexpected conditions by developing forecasts of worst-case scenarios or unexpected conditions that could occur. And they can use their pestle analysis to do this. What if there's an economic downturn, or a huge technological development, or a safety emergency? And they can identify different courses of action that they can take in that worst-case situation. An extension of contingency planning in terms of forecasting is building scenarios. This is a very specific technique, asking what if, to look at current trends and discontinuities and try and visualize future possibilities. A company that has a really good reputation for using scenarios is Shell Oil. As you may well imagine, they're in a business that's experiencing a lot of renewed interest because fossil fuels are both running out and deemed to damage the environment. So Shell has developed a number of scenarios to see how they're going to participate positively in the future and where the energy environment is heading. This doesn't necessarily work out exactly as they planned, but for example, Shell has a sky scenario, and this sky scenario is envisioning the energy future in 2050. This helps them to see what the trends are and how they should plan and position their company in order to try and take advantage of some of these trends. The last thing that we need to look at with regards to planning for a turbulent environment is crisis planning, trying to anticipate unexpected events that can be both sudden and devastating. Crisis planning can help the organization prepare for unexpected and devastating events. A carefully thought out and coordinated plan can be used to respond to any disaster. You might not know, for example, when a tsunami or earthquake or severe storm could hamper your business, but in certain regions of the world, Storms of that magnitude are an eventuality. At some point it's going to happen. So companies can have a crisis plan in place. There are two stages here. The first that we need to look at is prevention. These are the things that the company needs to do before there is any crisis. They should be focused on building relationships with their key stakeholders, as these are the most influential people in their environment. Whether it's employees or investors or suppliers, they need to know who to call and be able to speak to them clearly and with a good open relationship, because this will also enable them to detect any signals of unhappiness in the environment. It's, for example, possible for an organization that has a good relationship with their employees to avert a labor strike if they detect signals in the company of unhappiness by their employees. The second stage that we need to look at is preparation. So what you see a lot of companies doing, specifically airline companies, is they have to have plans in place, crisis plans in place, in case a plane gets hijacked or it crashes. And sometimes they need to combine these plans. What if it's hijacked and then crashes? And in this planning, they need to know exactly what they're going to do. They can't, for example, wait for a crisis and then try and decide what the plan is. So before any eventuality like that, which we do of course try to avoid, they need to designate the team that will deal with the crisis and who the spokesperson for the organization is going to be. That person then becomes the voice, and they must be continuously informed so that they can liaise with media and the external environment consistently and truthfully. Next, they need to create a detailed crisis management plan. What are we going to do? Step 1, step 2. What do we need to think about if this is the eventuality? And then, of course, this all needs to be supported with an effective communication system. If the organization is bending over backwards, but their stakeholders are not aware of this, it can damage the reputation of the organization. An innovative approach to planning is for managers to set stretch goals that encourage their organization to achieve excellence. These goals are highly ambitious in nature, they have to be very clear and compelling, and they often rely on the imagination of those involved to bring the plan into reality. Another good requirement is if the goal requires innovation, because it forces the organization to rely on multidimensional teams, for example, to achieve the required goals. These goals must, however, be seen as achievable, otherwise it can be discouraging. In 1996, in an article on building your company's vision, the authors identified a new type of audacious goal, the Big Hairy Audacious Goal, or BHAG, and advocated that companies try to employ these types of goals in their planning. As times move faster and become more turbulent, these types of goals are very important.
Performance dashboards give people in the organization the ability to see how they are progressing towards their goals. And ideally, we want everyone in the organization to have a view of this. If we think about a dashboard as something that could be on a screen in office or on a screen in a waiting room to indicate whether a hospital is managing patient wait times well, or whether a team that is planning towards an event are meeting all of the deadlines in order to make sure the event can be successfully delivered on time and according to set goals and targets. What these dashboards can help us to do by having a one-page view of a program management perspective using a Gantt chart is to see what the lead activities are where we cannot afford delays and how we're progressing on those activities in order for us to ultimately meet the end goal. These sorts of charts can come in many different formats. Consider the Gantt chart provided as an example here. But their purpose is very important in organization. We don't want the strategic planning to be something that happens once a year and then there's performance evaluation at the end of the year with staff individually. We want to have really good insight continuously on how we're progressing towards our goals and what these performance dashboards can do, especially with the appropriate technology and information integrated into them, is help employees keep track of key metrics, make sure those goals are aligned across the enterprise and at various levels, And this kind of information can help the teams working on things, projects, programs as a whole, stay focused on what they're supposed to do, seeing the key things that they will be measured on or that customers are looking for. There's a lot of good project management software that can help to do this, and not just have management level executive decision systems, but support employee level at very lower levels in the organization to support their awareness of how they're progressing towards their goals and performing relative to the key objectives of the organization.